worship together this morning. He's coming on the clouds. He's coming on the clouds. Kings and kingdoms will bow down. And every chain will break. His broken hearts declare his praise. For who could stop the Lord Almighty? Our God is the Lion of Judah. He's roaring with power and fighting our battles. And every knee will bow before him. Our God is the Lamb that was slain for the sins of the world. His blood breaks the chains, and every knee will bow before the Lion and the Lamb. Oh, every knee will bow before him. Oh, so open up the gates. So open up the gates. Make way before the King of Kings. He comes to save. The God who comes to save is here to set the captives free. For who could stop the Lord Almighty? Our God is the Lion of Judah. He's roaring with power and fighting our battles. And every knee will bow before him. Our God is the Lamb that was slain for the sins of the world. His blood breaks the chains, and every knee will bow before the Lion and the Lamb. Oh, every knee will bow before him. And who could stop the Lord Almighty? Who could stop the Lord Almighty? There is no one. Who could stop the Lord Almighty? Who could stop the Lord Almighty? We believe it. Who could stop the Lord Almighty? No one. Who could stop the Lord Almighty? Who could stop the Lord Almighty? There is no one. Who could stop the Lord? And our God is the Lion of Judah. He's roaring with power and fighting our battles. And every knee will bow before him. And our God is the Lamb that was slain for the sins of the world. His blood breaks the chains, and every knee will bow before the Lion and the Lamb. Oh, every knee will bow before him. Can we just give our God praise this morning? Every knee will bow before him. This morning I want to read from 1 Peter chapter 1. This is verse 3. It says, "Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. According to his great mercy, he's caused us to be born again into a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, to an inheritance that is imperishable, undefiled, and unfading, kept in heaven for you, who by God's power are being guarded through faith for a salvation ready to be revealed in the last time." And verse 6 says, "In this you rejoice." What we do on Sundays as we gather together is we're rejoicing in the fact that Jesus has accomplished this work for us. Amen? So let's just continue to just lift him up as we sing out and praise for what our God has done for us. Come thou fount of every blessing, tune my heart to sing thy grace. Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. Teach me some fixed upon it, Mount of thy redeeming love. Jesus. Here I raise my Ebenezer, hither by thy help I come, and I hope by thy good pleasure safely to arrive at home. Jesus saw me when a stranger, wandering from the fold of God, he to rescue me from danger, interposed his precious blood. That's why we sing this new chorus today. Above all else, we will praise his name. Above all else, I adore your name. Above all else, tune my heart to sing your praise. Sing that one more time. Above all else, I adore your name. Above all else, tune my heart to sing your praise. Oh, to grace, how great a debtor daily I'm constrained to be. Let thy goodness like a fetter bind my wandering heart to thee. Prone to wonder, Lord, I feel it. Prone to leave the God I love. Here's my heart, Lord, take and seal it for thy courts above. Blessed assurance, Jesus is mine. Oh, what a foretaste of glory divine, heir of salvation, purchased of God, born of his Spirit, washed in his blood. This is my story. This is my story. This is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. And this is my story. This is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. Perfect submission, all is at rest. I and my Savior am happy and blessed, watching and waiting, looking above, filled with his goodness, lost in his love. And this is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long, praising my Savior all the day long. Jesus, we just thank you today that we have a hope in you that is eternal, it's lasting, and it's not based on anything that we could do to earn it. This is our story, that you have changed our life. I pray that we leave today just not trying to earn anything, God, that we would go out and live out what you've called us to because of what you've already done. Jesus, we just love you and we honor you and we lift you high in this place because you are worthy of our worship and our praise. Speak to us now as we just dive into your word. It's in the name of Jesus I pray. Amen. You can have a seat.
At this time, our children's church is going to make their way to their worship area. I see Skylar Everett with them. He really loves kids. He loves kids. Fried or boiled, he loves kids. So your kids are safe with them. Take your Bibles, if you will, and turn to the book of Proverbs, chapter 3. And those of you that are familiar with the writer of Proverbs, you know that it is Solomon. He wrote the book of Proverbs. In fact, he wrote a couple other books. He wrote one of them when he was a hopeless romantic. He wrote the Songs of Solomon, and it is beautiful, romantic love. And then in the middle ages of his life, he wrote the book of Proverbs, which are wisdom, which really gives us a way on how to live and tells us how to live and gives us instruction on how to live. And then if we don't do that, there are repercussions that come from not obeying truth, right? And then he comes to the end of his life, and then he writes the book of Ecclesiastes. And if you're a student of the Word of God, you know that Ecclesiastes is about vanity, about a man that looked at life and looked around at all the things that he accomplished in his life and all the hundreds of wives and concubines that he had and all the wealth that he could put his hands on. And then he realized that under the sun, the S-U-N, sun, everything is vanity. It's vanity of vanities of vanities. But under the sun, we get the image later on about Solomon's life that as he spoke forward to Jesus that would come, the S-O-N, there is life. This world cannot fix what's broken in us. This world cannot give us anything that will last us or help us to have great fulfillment. It can give us pleasure. We can have moments of pleasure, but yet only Christ can give us true, lasting hope. And hopefully today we will see that. Ecclesiastes, Songs of Solomon, but today it's Proverbs chapter 3. I'm going to read beginning in verse number 1, and I'm going to read all the way to verse number 10. If you don't mind, if you can, let's stand as I read this. My son, don't forget my teaching, but let your heart keep my commands, for they will bring many days, a full life, and well-being. Right out of the chute, he says, obey God. You want to live a full life? Obey God. You want to just exist in this life? Disobey God. Full lives come from obedience. Never let loyalty and faithfulness leave you. Tie them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Then when you find favor and high regard with people and with God, love God. Obey God. Love God. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. And do not rely on your own understanding. In all your ways, know Him, and He will make your path straight. Trust God. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil. And that word fear right there gets some bad press, doesn't it? How many of us have spent our lives sometimes, and our fear is this: we're afraid of what God's going to do to us. That's not what he's talking about here. He's talking about reverence for God. It's not what God's going to do to us. It's what are we going to do to God? Are we going to disrespect him? Are we going to live in such a way that would embarrass him? He says, I want you to fear the Lord and turn away from evil. This will be healing for your body and strengthening for your bones. Honor the Lord, in verse 9, with your promises and with the first produce of your entire harvest. Then your barns will be completely filled and your vats will overflow with new wine. In other words, honor God. And may God be honored with the reading of his word. You may be seated. Today, just for a few weeks, we're going to talk about why. Because why is a big word. I kind of thought the why thing was over with in Lori and I's life until our grandkids came along. And then the why word came back with a vengeance. I mean, it's just back. I mean, everything is why. Why? And then I came across some things that I thought was kind of humorous about how we ask why as adults. Why? Why are there braille dots? Transport something by car, it's called a shipment. And when you transport something by ship, it's called a cargo. Why? I mean, there's a lot of whys, right? Why is it that when you're driving and looking for an address, you automatically turn down your radio when you're looking for something? See, there's all kinds of whys. In fact, when you think about the whys in our life, and especially today when we talk about why trust God, why not trust God? Why not? In a day where people are asking a ton of questions, over the next few weeks we're going to talk about why trust God, why worship God, why spend time with God's Word, why do we value our children, why do we honor our parents, why do we do all of those things? Because the Bible tells us why. And there's an answer to the why in the Word of God. And today is no exception. Today we're going to talk about why trust God from that very familiar passage, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, where in the King James it says, trust in the Lord with all thine heart and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all your ways, in all thy ways, acknowledge him and he shall direct thy path. Very simply, our part is trusting God. His part is directing our life. I mean, that is it in a nutshell. Our part is very simple. Is that we trust him. We put our confidence in him. And what happens when we do that? He directs our life. That's what God desires to do in our life. God will keep his promises to his children. And he hinges those promises on our obedience. It's our obedience. And the key to all of that is understanding that Proverbs 3, 5, 6, that very first word of Proverbs 3, 5 is the word trust. I mean, isn't that a big word? Isn't that a word that if we leave it alone by itself, it answers itself? And the fact of the matter is that most of us in this room have a problem and have a reason to have a problem with trusting people. Because haven't we been disappointed by people? Haven't we been disappointed politically, spiritually? Haven't we been disappointed relationally? We all have. We all have things in our life that keeps us from sometimes trusting others. But when you boil it right down to it, there should never be a problem with God. Because does God keep his word? Absolutely. Is God a God of his word? Absolutely. Is God going to change his mind on his word? Absolutely not. You trust God. You trust him. You trust in the Lord with all thine heart. And that word for trust there is a beautiful word. It deals with that complete confidence in the power of God. It's the image of when you trust the Lord with all your heart, you're putting all of your confidence in God. All the confidence of your life you're putting it in God. It means to lay down. It's that imagery of when you trust something, it means to lay down or stretch out on. Like, for instance, when you go to bed tonight, you lay down on that bed. You trust that bed to hold you. You stretch out on that. Why? Because you trust it. You trust the bed. You're lying down on it, showing that you trust it. And you know, that truth is so powerful when you think about how we're supposed to trust God. We're to trust God with all of our heart, not half-hearted. You know, if you're half-hearted in anything, are you going to be any good at it? Absolutely not. If you're half-hearted in your marriage, I'm telling you, you're in a crumbling environment. If you're half-hearted in your job, then don't be surprised when you don't go nowhere but down from there. If you're half-hearted in anything, it is just a downward spiral from there. And yet, Proverbs, Solomon says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Not with part of your heart, not with the leftover of your life, but with all of your life. We trust Him. We lay down on that. We put our confidence on Him. He says, trust in the Lord with all thy heart and lean not to your own understanding. He tells us, lean not to your own understanding. That word lean, we know what lean means. If you've ever been on a walker, or if you've ever had a reason to be on a walker or have a cane, you lean on it. Or if you've ever been sick enough that you can't stand up on your own, you lean on somebody. You lean on it. That's what leaning does. It's finding support. And this is what he says. He says, lean not on thine own understanding. In other words, be careful that you don't lean on your own understanding. And that word understanding is another beautiful word that gives the imagery there of referring to our mental capacity. Mentally, we formulate opinions and ideas, and self-perseverance happens in our mind. But what does he do in this verse? He tells us, he says, lean not on your own understanding. He uses a negative there by making it an imperative. He says, don't go through this life and think you're smart enough to figure it out. Lean not. Lean not on your own understanding. You may be smarter than a fifth grader, but you're not smart enough to figure it out. Because there are a lot of things in our life that we're not capable of ourselves and by ourselves with enough outside interference from our friends to help us sort through the mayhem that we can find our lives in. You know, many times I've spoken to people when they're incarcerated at jail, and I've often, that thought came to my mind that your best thinking is what's put you right where you are at that moment. You're here because you began a thought process and you acted it out and you thought it was going to end better than it did, and you're now locked up in jail. And some of us may never end up in jail. Some of us should be in jail, but maybe you won't ever end up in jail. But the thought that comes to our mind when our world crumbles around us is, what have we done to create this problem? And typically we trace it all the way back to our own thinking. That's why the writer of Proverbs, lean not to thy own understanding. Because in and of and by ourselves, our own understanding can get us in trouble. When you read the Bible, you read a story about Noah. Noah built that boat on dry ground. And the people must have thought he was a lunatic. But Noah wasn't leaning on his own understanding. God told him where to build it. When you read about Joshua, and Joshua marched around the walls of Jericho. And he did so 7 times. And everybody there thought he must be crazy. But Joshua was doing what God told him to do. When you read about Saul, they came to David and said, hey, there's Goliath, and you need a sword and a spear. And David said, oh no, that's not what I need. I need a string and a rock. And he went against that great giant and defeated it. Why? Because he did not lean on his own understanding. Noah did not lean on his own understanding. Joshua did not lean on his own understanding. And when we go through our life, we must learn what it means not to lean. Great for experience, great for hard lessons that we learn in life. But don't go through life and think, well, I'm just going to lean on my own understanding. When the writer of Proverbs says, don't do it. Don't be foolish. Don't lean on your own understanding. You know, we have a grandboy named Will. Will was in the yard one day. The girls, Sarah and her cousins, were on the trampoline, and Ben was out in the barn, and Bethany was busy on the inside, and Will was out there trying to get the cover off of his little old sand thing, a little sand thing where Ben keeps sand. They have a couple of cats, so you know why you have to cover sand, right? Or Will will find things and bring it in the house. But so Will was out there, couldn't get it off. He wanted somebody to help him. They wouldn't help him. So he came up with this ingenious idea. He's got an electric John Deere gator and a rope. And he went out there and he tied it to the top of that little sandbox. And all the while, Sarah stopped what she's doing in the trampoline and looks down and sees Will, wondering, what is he going to do? He ties that to that and hooks it to the gator. He pulls that top, that big old heavy top, off that sandbox. And Sarah stands on the edge and says, Will, look at what you've done. And Will looks up at Sarah and says, I'm a genius. That is so funny. You know, it might be true. Until yesterday, Bethany sent me this updated photo of Will. And this is yesterday. He's on top of a gravel pile, a rock pile, and all he's got on is a bike helmet, underwear, and cowboy boots. That's how it is in our life, right? You can hit and miss and be a genius every once in a while. But at the end of the day, on your own understanding, you're just like a little toddler in your underwear, standing on a rock pile with cowboy boots and a bike helmet. Because that's just how smart we are, really. Because we're no smarter than a 3-year-old when it comes to some things in our life. We're not to lean on our own understanding. We're not to do it. In fact, the scripture tells us that if we're going to be what God wants us to be, we should understand what it means to completely commit ourselves to the purpose of God. He says that all of your ways, not in some of your ways, but in all of your ways, acknowledge Him. That means that there has to be consciously a decision every day in our life. I cannot afford to let myself take over the decision making in my life. I need to acknowledge God. I need to acknowledge God in all of my ways. In fact, that word for knowledge literally means this. It means to recognize or to see. That's what it means. That if I acknowledge God, it means I recognize. I see that God and God alone has the power that I don't have. He has the knowledge that I don't have to guide my life. It's a beautiful, powerful picture. In fact, it comes with it, this, to acknowledge the Lord in all of our ways. It brings this imagery of knowing God. Knowing. Can I tell you how you know somebody? You spend time with that somebody, don't you? You know them. You spend time with them. You learn what it means. Reads my mind. And she don't like what she reads. But you know, we've been together long enough that she already knows what I'm thinking. And I know what she's thinking. And I know sometimes that I don't want to know everything that she's thinking. Because that's the part of being around somebody. But guess what? Nobody's exhausted the knowing of God, have we? But what does it tell us? Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not to your own understanding. In all of your ways, acknowledge. Acknowledge who? Acknowledge Him. Knowledge. Know Him. Spend time knowing Him. Exhaust every opportunity you get to know Him. You know, one of the things that we're back doing in our church is this thing called Sunday school. Now, I realize that most of us, when we're in the quarantine time, we probably didn't keep up with our quarterly, or we didn't keep up with Bible study. But guess what happens when you have Bible study with someone? Each of you in that class, you're learning how to develop an atmosphere where you can ask questions and you can share your desires and maybe some of your struggles. And you can do that in Sunday school. You can do that with the Word of God. And we need it. We need to have more knowledge. We need to get to a point in our life that we are knowing more and more, not less and less about God. In fact, there's no participation trophy for those who just every once in a while learn about God. There's just going to be a lot of disappointment. Because what Solomon is saying, when you trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not to your own understanding, in all your ways you acknowledge Him. When you do that with your life, something beautiful is going to happen. What's going to happen? He's going to direct your path. He's going to direct your path. I mean, think about it. Here's a God that will direct our path. I love what G. Campbell Morgan said one day when someone came to him. And they came to him and said, Dr. Morgan, do you think God really cares about the little things in my life? And Dr. Morgan wisely replied, Madam, do you think in your life there's anything that's big to God? How many of you think that there's something in your life is so big to God? Really? Really? Do you really think that? Fast forward 10 years from now, what's it going to look like in 10 years? Do you think it really, that there's something in your life that is too big for God? In fact, the truth of the matter, everything in our life is a little thing compared to God. Everything. And G. Campbell Morgan's correct. That in our life, that there is something, that when we come before God, there's nothing too big for God. There's nothing in our life too big for God to handle. Whatever it is, it's not too big for God. It may be too big for me. It may be too big for my family. It may be too big for my children, but it's not too big for my God. He can handle it. He tells us that when we're controlled by the plan of God, that He will direct our path. And that word direct means to cut a highway, to clear out a path. And you think about your life. We're in this thing called life, and let me tell you how it works out. It's not all smooth sailing or smooth driving. In fact, the road of life is hard. It's uphill, it's downhill, it's curvy, it's treacherous, it's difficult, it's road slides, it's mud slides, it's life slides. Everything that can happen on the road of life happens. Everything does. And what does He tell us? That when we trust in the Lord with all of our heart, lean not to our own understanding, in all of our ways acknowledge Him. He says, I will cut a way through this. I will see you safely through this. I will take care of you all the way through this thing called life. He'll do it. You know, in the back of your worship bulletin was a little fill-in-the-blank thing. It says you can only live on one of the below levels. What level are you living on today? Are you living on that level? I'll do what I want to do. I'll just do what I want to do. Well, it didn't work out for old Frankie boy, did it? You know, he said, I'm going to do it his way, and sang a song and made millions off of it. But did it work out for him? No. It don't work out like that. This is the majority of the way the world thinks today. I do what I want to do. That's how 3-year-old thinks. I do what I want to do. Maybe, like many people that make up Christendom today, I do what I think I ought to do. Maybe you're like that person. I live in the ought to world. I do what I feel like I ought to do, given the circumstances. There are a lot of people that make up Christendom that live just like that. Professing believers that says, I do what I think I ought to do. But there's that other level. And that level says, I do what God leads me to do. Can I tell you, that's where God wants every child of His. Doing what He leads us to do. Getting to the place in our life that we want what He wants for our life. We're not satisfied with our own choosing. We're not satisfied with our own leading. We're saying, God, I'm in a mess. I've created a mess. And the only way out of the mess is your direct path. I may have put my stinking thinking into it that got me here. But God, my stinking thinking won't get me out of here. I've got to surrender to you. I've got to believe that only doing what you want me to do will salvage this life. Throughout the Word of God, Proverbs 11:14, Solomon says, where there is no counsel, people fail. They fail. And then one translation says they fall. They fall or they fail. No matter how you look at it, without guidance from God, we're destined to failure. We are. Without God calling the shots in our life, then we're going to call our own shots. And then we fail. The writer of Proverbs says in 29, which that very familiar passage, where there is no vision, people perish. Where there is no wise counsel, what one translation says, where there is no godly wise counsel, we're destined to failure. Proverbs 3 tells us the way out of it is to trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not to your own understanding. In all of your ways, acknowledge Him. And He'll direct your path. Now there's someone, I'm sure, in your life. If it's not you, there's someone in your life that needs to know that there's a God that will direct their life. If you already know that, great, grand, and good. But let me tell you something. God didn't just save you for you to be in and forget about everybody else. There's a lot of other people that need to know that there's a way out of this complete chaotic world. And that way out is Christ. When Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And nobody comes to the Father unless they come through me. Jesus is telling this is the why we trust. We trust in God. Why? Because He's the way, the truth, and the life. Nobody comes to the Father unless they come by way of the Son. You can't get there from a good night's sleep. You can't get there because somebody just dropped a line on Facebook. You can't get there because somebody offered a word of encouragement. You only get there when you trust God and trust His Son to be your Savior. And He will not misguide your life. Let's pray together. Father, thank you, God, for giving us your word today to look at. Thank you, Father, for reminding us afresh right here in this room that truly there is a way that seemeth right to a man or to a woman or to a young person. But the end result of that way is destruction. But God, to live a life of trust, is not something we can do half-heartedly. We either trust you with all of our heart or we just don't trust you at all. We don't trust you with just part of our life. We don't trust you with the dirty things in our life. We don't just trust you when we're having big decisions on where to live or where to work or who to marry or who to date. We don't just trust you with that. It's either all or nothing when it comes to you. And Lord, for a world, for Christendom that has embraced this idea that doing what we ought to do and living by what we feel and being so disappointed at the end of it all because our life is not salvaged by trusting ourselves or trusting our feelings. Our lives are salvaged when we trust you. And we trust you with everything. All of our failures, we trust you. All the disappointments, we trust you. All the things in our life, God, that we thought we did, we realized, God, it was you. And we give you even our accomplishments, everything. We trust you. For the longevity of our home and our marriage, for the loving relationship we have with our children, we trust you, we thank you, we acknowledge you. And Father, even those times when we have not done right by our spouse and by our family and even by our own children or grandchildren, we realize, God, that where we went astray is that we were, just as we sang earlier, we're prone to leave the God we love. And the way we do that is when we're not trusting you. But today, God, help us to recognize that we trust you. And we trust you with all of our heart. As we stand and worship.
Are you hurting and broken within, overwhelmed by the weight of your sin? Jesus is calling. Have you come to the end of yourself? Do you thirst for a drink from the well? Jesus is calling. Oh, come to the altar. The Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness was bought with the precious blood of Jesus Christ. And leave behind your regrets and mistakes. Come today, there's no reason to wait. Jesus is calling. Bring your sorrows and trade them for joy. From the ashes a new life is born. Jesus is calling. Oh, come to the altar. The Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness was bought with the precious blood of Jesus Christ. Oh, what a Savior! Isn't He wonderful? Sing hallelujah! Christ is risen. And bow down before Him, for He is Lord of all. Sing hallelujah! Christ is risen. And oh, come to the altar. The Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness was bought with the precious blood of Jesus Christ.
It's the precious blood of Jesus. The precious blood. We're not redeemed by silver or gold, but by the precious blood of Jesus. And that redemption is full and it's free. But along with that redemption is responsibility to live redeemed, to be satisfied in Jesus. And that don't come from nothing but trusting Him. Trusting Him with all your heart. Do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge Him. Know Him. Know what He loves. Know what He doesn't love. Know what He gets delight in and joy from. Know Him. And you can rest assured that He will direct your life. It may not be the way you scripted it out. It may be through a valley of a lot of suffering. But He'll have His hand on it. And that you will not be alone. Because He doesn't direct us and leave us. He goes through whatever it is with us. Today, if you've decisions that you need to make, there's a way you can do that by just tearing off this part of the worship bulletin. Going to our app, sending a message. When you leave, there's an offering place at every entrance. You can drop these in. Let us know. Maybe you want to be a part of the faith family at Cedar Grove. Maybe you want to follow the Lord in believer's baptism. Maybe you just need somebody to talk with you about it. Maybe, just maybe, you need to be in a small group. I would hope that everybody in this room will make it their intent this week to think about what would it look like if I truly got involved in a Bible study group at a church. And I felt accountable. And I felt responsible to not just listen, but to put something into it. You get out of it what you're going to put into it, right? Yes. In your handout today, there are a lot